is your position on feeding homeless people in parks and other congregation sites? Will you pledge to oppose any ordinance against feeding homeless people in public areas?
So I feel that and I've actually done this myself. I've been an advocate of homeless youth for going on 5 years now with an organization called Stand Up for Kids. And so I've been out at St. James Park, and we have a new center in downtown as well where we help and feed homeless youth. But I also see it as an area where we can see improvement. There are locations that we can utilize, like the center that I've helped create and organize in downtown with Stand Up for Kids, where it's a central location where they can go to be sure that they get the nutrition, the food, and the help that they need. And we have other organizations that we can partner with. Places like churches, places like here, like Sacred Heart. And so I would support that.
I don't believe our public parks are the appropriate place to be feeding the homeless. There are other places, including here at Sacred Heart, including at Loaves and Fishes, who I've talked to, where feeding of the homeless can take place. But the public parks are not the place that is appropriate for doing that. My office is right by St. James Park. I'm very aware of the environment there at all times of the day and on the weekends. It's not the appropriate place for feeding the homeless. There are other places to do it, including at the county fairgrounds if we implement my strategy. So I don't think it's appropriate to do it in public parks.
I don't want to live in a community where it's illegal to help our hungry neighbors. So I oppose the criminalization of feeding the homeless. And I would support more programs to feed the homeless.
Sometimes when we do a good thing, we confuse the goal with the means. The goal is to feed and shelter the homeless. The means is anywhere we can. So on one hand, I do not oppose any criminalization of it, but I don't think we should keep it as a long-term solution. It's only temporary. I'd rather have a solution resolved to have them fed and sheltered at home. That would relieve it.
Thank you very much. So that concludes the housing theme portion of our questions. We do have a period of rebuttal. We have two candidates that choose to use that here at this point. So, Tian Nguyen, you have 1 minute.
My rebuttal as to the housing impact fee. At first, I agree with Don as to we do not hurt people who provide the service of the home. But then I became educated when I learned that the inclusion home zoning proposal has been opposed by the builders. In other words, they keep making good profit without providing a solution. Therefore, the impact fee is only the last resort. Therefore, I think that's only the benefit to the worst. So I got to support, make them work and meet their cost.
Thank you very much, Tian.
So my rebuttal is as well in regards to the housing impact fee. And as my opponent stated, he has a study that was done that shows on the negative impacts that it can have. As we know, studies can be done in numerous ways. And I have a study from New York University that actually speaks directly to the study that he's talking about here from San Jose State professors that debunks what they says. And that says that in fact, it won't have a negative effect. I as well have another study that was done, which was an impact study that was done here in San Jose to see what the impact would be on new development. And they determined that there is a reasonable fee that could be imposed as a housing impact fee that would not impact development.
That concludes our housing portion. We'll now be moving on to the theme of immigration. Edith Torres, sorry.
This is a yes or no question for all candidates. We'll start with Don Cagliardi. Cities like Los Angeles and New York City host an Office of Immigrant Affairs to help orient the immigrant community, centralize services, and provide education. As a council member, would you support opening a similar office in San Jose? Please answer yes or no.
Yes. Answer yes.
I would rather see us partnering with the county so that money goes to actual services and not the creation of two bureaucracies to help immigrants. We in Santa Clara County already spend more than any big city on immigration services. Let's put the money towards actual services.
What's that?
So,
Yes or no?
yes, can I say 2 yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All candidates have 60 seconds to answer this question. We'll continue with Mayes Garza. What do you see as the unmet needs of immigrants that the city has a role in addressing?
I think we have to prepare. We have about 170 to 260 undocumented in our county. 60,000, sorry. And I think that we need to provide the services to people and be prepared for changes in immigration so that these people and their families and the children are not left on their own. In our county, we've spent $570,000 on deferred action. That's one example of the type of things that we need to do to help people.
I would think that 3 urgent items that I would urge the city to take action because of the common good. One is for the ID card, to make sure that we know who people are, rather than dealing with the unknown. Secondly, education for kids, rather than have the kids educate other than to do something else. And last but not least, the health care. We'd rather treat them before they become more sick, become more a burden to our society.
So I think the biggest concern is the concern that's also national, which is immigration reform. And here in the county, we can be at the forefront of this with supporting things like we have already in being a leader with our civil detainer policy, on being a leader in our police department when we removed impounding vehicles of those that were without licenses, being a leader in supporting, as we have in our state, with California driver's licenses. But I think we need to continue to keep the pressure on this conversation of national immigration reform. I think that's the issue that's affecting us from nationwide all the way down here locally.
So I support immigration reform very strongly, but the city council is not going to be able to implement immigration reform. Our Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren is the strongest advocate in Congress on immigration reform. She's not been able to do it. This council's not going to be able to do it. What we need to provide for immigrants in this community are jobs and affordable housing. That's what we need. And if we can provide those, we're going to make a big dent in the quality of life for immigrant communities, just like for all of us. And then we also need to provide services to all of our residents. And that includes services for youth, after school activities, and safe places in our parks and so forth. So immigrant communities deserve the same level of service as the rest of us. That's what we all need.
All candidates have 60 seconds to answer this question. We'll start with Tammy Nguyen. Immigrants are often victims of crime, fraud, and violations of rights. How can the city support the integration and success of immigrants who make up a large portion of the economic and cultural life of San Jose?
That issue is very dear to me because that's what I dealt with, and I decided to become a lawyer 22 years ago because of that. As a young new immigration group, we have difficulty communicating, understanding, and the 2 shooting incidents of the Big Gold Trend 11 years ago and 6 years later in Henry Pham. I think the police department in San Jose have done great work, but much more can be done in terms of cultural sensitivity, language skill, and other incident intervention that can help. Therefore, I would support the city and the police department to really improve their service and information of immigrant people.
Well, and in being a police officer for the last 8 years and in working in communities right here, just like yours, and communities all around San Jose, and as well being from an immigrant father myself, I understand this issue intimately. When I began with the police department, that was a time when we would impound vehicles of unlicensed drivers automatically. And since that time, we've grown and we've progressed as a city and as a department. And just last year, in a role as a Human Relations Commissioner at the county, I stood in support of keeping our civil detainer policy strong to make sure that our immigrants weren't unjustly kept in jail for longer periods of time than anybody else would be. So making sure that here in Santa Clara County and in our city, that we're treating everybody fairly and equally is something that I want to continue to propose we do.
So I agree with what the other candidates have said, but I want to emphasize as well that I think it's important that undocumented immigrants in this city recognize that if they report crime in their neighborhood, that they will not be a victim of governmental process. And I know that our city has been a leader in attempting to avoid that, but I'm not sure that the message has gotten out. And in part that may be due to language barriers, but we really do need to get the message out that undocumented immigrants in our community are the equals of all of us in our community. And that will be my ethos as councilperson.
So I'd like to mention two things. One is the fraud issue. I'm really glad that you brought that up. I worked for Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren for several years on immigration issues and on issues where immigrants were being targeted for fraud. And so it's important that we as a community stand up against that. And in the nonprofit community, I've seen it in so many different communities. It's not just in the Latino community. It's not just here. It's all over, and we need to talk about it more. Secondly, how can the city support on crime? First, we need to fight for our civil detainer policy. We had to really fight for it. It was not a gimme where we were creating one set of rules for immigrants and one set of rules for everybody else. So we need to make sure that that policy stays in place so that immigrants don't become victimized twice in crime here in San Jose. Thank you.
All candidates have 60 seconds to answer this question. We'll start with Raul Perales. Immigrant communities often have tense relationships with the police. How will you work with the police department to ensure that all people in San Jose, including undocumented immigrants, can feel safe reporting crimes?
I think the number one way that we can do this is in restoring our community policing. We used to have a community policing division within the department that we've lost, as we've lost a number of other departments within San Jose's Police Department because of the cuts that we faced. And I think that should be one of the focuses as to why we want to restore those services. I used to play a major role within our community policing services division. As I said, coming from an immigrant family, growing up here in San Jose, and as well as being a San Jose police officer, I had that ability to engage and interact with our community, to speak their language, to understand where it was they were coming from, and to make them and their children feel more comfortable about their police services and knowing that we're here to work with them and to help them. So I'd love to be able to bring those services back to strengthen that relationship again.
So I alluded to this in my previous response, and I do think outreach needs to happen, and I agree with Mr. Perales that community policing is part of the answer, but here's the irony here. As a neighborhood leader, I have been advocating for community policing for years, and the impediment, I've been told by city officials, is the Police Officers Association, which will not allow its officers to remain in a community more than 6 months. They rotate officers out every 6 months instead of keeping them for longer periods. So we can implement community policing right away if the Police Officers Association would get out of the way and do what neighborhood leaders like myself have been advocating for years.
This is a very personal question for me. I mentioned that I'm from San Jose. My parents actually fought for community policing. They used to have to follow police officers to document how they treated minorities in San Jose. And we're part of the effort with our faith-based leaders, our community leaders, our politicians to change the way we police in San Jose. The whole idea was to have a high-quality police force who works with the community, that we recruit diverse officers who are from the community, who can communicate with the community. And so I think first off, what we need to do is we need to have more police officers. Right now we're responding to so many crimes we don't read about in the newspaper, daily shootings and other crimes that happen, especially in District 7, that we need them to be able to get out of their car, to be able to talk to people. Secondly, we need to be the kind of department that is the department of choice, that we have diverse, high-quality officers to want to work here. Thank you.
about 11 years ago, 2003, it took a shooting up the woman pickup trend on Taylor Street. For the first time, the Vietnamese American marched on and led the march to the San Jose Police Department. Therefore, from then on, we've changed a lot. I think the San Jose Police Department has done a great job, but they could do better with the following three items. Recruiting more minority and women officers. Secondly, increase the language skill. Give them additional bonus to the skill. The second language would be great. And third, increase crisis intervention training. So treat not only the individuals, also the mental health people too. I think we could be much better than that.
So thank you very much, candidates. That concludes the immigration theme. And we'll now be moving on to micro business development. And we have Elizabeth Cruz. Any questions?